Well, for more on China's SOEs and private companies, I spoke with Keyu Jin. She's an economics professor at the London School of Economics. I began by asking her how private firms can improve while competing with state-owned companies.
The private sector still needs to find the right kind of interaction, cooperation with the government, as we know that there are many kinds of either explicit kind of collaboration, private-public partnership, which the government has been pushing, but also, to understand what's going on with the macroeconomy, where's the policy direction. That is in general very important determinant to their business profitability and business strategy. But also, I think it's been a while since there's more of a push for this kind of cooperation, whether it's having the private sector hold a stake in some of the SOEs and vice versa.
Now, how do you view the role of state-owned enterprises versus private enterprises under this leadership?
I think that it is true that they are going to start to pull out some of the SOEs, or at least reduce their size. In fact, if we look at what has happened in the last few years, there have been a lot of SOEs that have exited and new ones that have been created. So my take is that they're still going to focus on a few of the strategic sectors, in which case there will be dominant large SOEs. And when we talk about large, it's like the largest in the world, right? So, but still, I think their role is going to be focused on a few strategic sectors and letting the rest of the market competition play a bigger role in firm selection.
And how much of a role do you think that will play in some of the debt reduction that we know that China wants to see?
Well, debt reduction will take time to digest, and I think the government has put forth a series of measures, including, starting from the very basics of increasing transparency at the local government level to see exactly what is going on, to understand, get more information. But to rely on government-led forces to reduce debt is unlikely. I think that whole deleveraging will have to come from, all corporates and just a reduction in liquidity in general.
Now, what are some of the lessons you think SOEs and private businesses could perhaps learn from each other, especially as we see more representation from private businesses?
Interestingly enough, it used to be that SOEs' productivity level was much lower than private sectors. And in the last few years, the new ones that were created, the new SOEs, had about the same level of productivity and efficiency. So actually, it's a mutually reinforcing kind of competition between both of them. And of course, SOEs might have some privileges, but it might have some knowledge spillovers from the private sector. I think the question really is, depending on the sector, sometimes it makes sense to have a bigger company with kind of externalities, and sometimes you just, like the downstream services industry, consumer-oriented industry is predominantly private sector, and that's because they're just most competitive.
And we know that China has a lot of priorities, whether it's innovation or increasing the amount of consumption in China. So when it comes to the private businesses, are there certain industries that tend to get more representation in the CPC or more focus?
I would say that the private sectors, well, first of all, it's a natural kind of selection process. So as we know, the internet-related companies, the more technology-based companies, the consumer-oriented technology, they've thrived. I mean, they really have pushed frontiers of innovation, and they have been very productive. So they will naturally be kind of the main, the main players. And of course, the government has put such an emphasis on technology and innovation, and it is fair to say that these will be the spearheaders of that trend.
Now, there's also been some criticism about the CPC increasing its control over businesses by establishing some of these party branch in enterprises. What's your take on that?
I think that the government wants to have a better handle of some of these very dominant players, and some of these private players are becoming bigger and bigger. And as we know, Apple, Google, Amazon, these kind of companies are already facing some of these, antitrust issues. And so I think it's all very related to have a greater grasp, and also to prevent monopolies, but also to prevent some of the major, financial problems that could wreck the economy in general.
And if you had to make a prediction here, what do you think businesses are hoping to hear from this 19th Party Congress about where China is heading in the next 5 years?
Well, I think that they would like to hear the market forces will play a bigger and bigger role, fair competition, that financial market reforms are going to carry on, that would give them the ability to tap into resources and in a fair way to reduce the misallocation of capital, and the gradual withdrawal of certain SOEs so that they have more room for these private players to play. I think these are the top three things they would like to see happen.